Welcome, welcome, welcome to this webinar, the second of a six-part series called Activating Bravery, where we can get our information, mostly our data and our research, out to people so they can start knowing what we know. Carrying this burden has been way too much for us, and we want to make sure we are empowering people with the information that's really critical to first and foremost affect their own lives. But if in fact your mothers or sisters or parents or teachers or coaches or community leaders, that you can apply this for everyone who needs to know it. Today, we are talking about why bravery matters for women. I want to be really clear that we do work with boys and men, and a lot of that work at the beginning contextualize our work with girls, but we have in the last 4 years started to work with we've worked with over 5,000 people, and we're really looking at the life cycle of bravery and confidence for girls and boys all the way to men and women. We are specifically going to talk about why bravery is a critical character strength for women today. And it's going to be that we have to go back into the pathology of why we started this work and what we have found out. This is, again, a part of the free webinar series that we're calling Activating Your Bravery. It's brought to you by The Chase, which is our online 8-week course that starts in about 2 weeks. It's for women to dig deep, to figure out who they are, what they want, and to build a plan to go after what it is they want. We'll be talking about that at the end of the webinar. A couple of key things for Zoom. If you've never been here before, or if you just need a refresher, we're live on Zoom, and so you can participate in the chat at any time. Make sure you click and toggle that blue little nod thing to all panelists and attendees if you want all of your chats to be available and viewable to all of us. If you want to send us a private question, or you just want to communicate privately, you can keep it on just all panelists, or you can send a question through the Q&A. If you want to go to the chat, if you're able, and say who you are and where you're from, we would love to hear from you. Any questions along the way, please let me know. If you want me to stop and talk about something, pop in a question to the chat if you can. The Brave team will filter it to me, and I will try to address it in real time. Also, if you like what I'm saying, or if it hits home for you, you can go ahead and press yeah, or you can do boom. We love the word boom here. So you can do that. And if you want to challenge me on anything, then take it to the chat. We want to hear it all. Mostly, we just want to share this really valuable information with you. I talk fast because we have only about 25 minutes to get in all the information I want you to know to help you or to help any women in your lives. So back to the why bravery matters. This is our session for today. So why did I start this company? I always feel like I need to say this. I was coaching a ton of teenage girls, 100 kids intimately, and thousands of kids when you looked at all the programs we were running. And I saw girls in 7th grade and 8th grade, and they were so robust and they were so confident. And then something was sort of happening, like when they got into high school and then they were sophomores. And it was like they wanted confidence. It's all the thing that they wanted and they talked about was, I want to be more confident. But then I say, okay, great. You got to try to do this outside of your comfort zone, and you got to try to make this big, bold move. And they'd be like, no. I don't think I want confidence to the extent that I'm willing to do those things. So something was happening where they were sadder, and they were less willing to take risks, and they were less willing to speak up, even if they were speaking up in their own families. It was something that I was seeing that was this shrinking girls. And these are girls who were playing lacrosse, who had these humongous big goals to play lacrosse in college against all odds. And I thought, is this just happening to my girls, or is this happening to all girls? Is this just happening to athletes, or is this just happening to all girl athletes, or is this just happening to girls in general? Is this happening to all kids? And if so, why is it happening? I wasn't as concerned with why is it happening than is it just happening to the kids that I'm coaching. So I really tried to dig deep and tried to, as a young coach, wanted to figure out like what's going on. Of course, I was trying everything I could on the front lines of coaching to figure out how are we going to get past this thing that I'm seeing is like suddenly trapping all the kids who are on my team. I talked to other coaches and they were saying the same thing. But in about maybe 2015, 16, I ran across this when I was deciding that I was going to be done with coaching kids, because I now wanted to take some of those strategies that we had really used to be able to help girls specifically, because that's what I was working with, help girls overcome some of their fears and really address things head on, start to take risks, start to get used to wanting to take risks. We felt like we were pulling them out of this confidence hole. And I wanted to figure out, like, is this happening to everybody? We came across this graph, which we show to everybody. And this is actually self-esteem. I didn't know necessarily that I was talking about confidence or bravery. I thought self-esteem was like close enough. And this showed me what I was seeing on the front lines. And I will describe the graph here for you guys. So the top line represented in triangles is men, bottom line for women is circles, and the middle line squares is the average. And what we basically see here is that between the ages of, you can see more explicitly, 9 and 14, confident or self-esteem drops for boys and girls really dramatically. For girls, especially dramatically. You can see how much lower it drops for girls than it does for boys. That boys and girls sort of like try to get going again, like between the ages of 14 and 22, but it's not really until 22 where they start this long and slow recovery. And if you can see by the age of 65, sort of boys or men have rebounded and girls are not quite up to where or women are not up to where they were when they started. This is alarming to me. And I like to start our sessions with this all the time because it's like we are seeing a bunch of things here. One, girls and boys both drop in puberty. So we want to know, or at between 9 and 14, especially 14 to 22, there's some attempt at recovery. They both drop dramatically. Girls more than boys. Boys and men track higher than girls and women their entire life. And for everyone, it's a long and slow recovery. Finally, for men, they recover, they rebound by 65 years old, but women are still sort of behind the way that they felt when they were 8 years old. This was like so alarming to me, but it also validated what I was experiencing on the front line. What we've done at Brave in working with 5,000 people is really do that same life cycle, but through the lens of bravery. And I've included the boys in green and yellow here, their bravery and confidence between the ages of 9 and 22. So you can see that this graph echoes what we saw with that global self-esteem graph. That is not our work. This is our work at Brave. Again, boys and girls both drop. Girls drop more than boys. Boys track higher than girls. And if we continue the boy to men line, it would track higher than women. But if we look at women alone, we are talking about a dramatic drop between the ages of 9 and 22. And then for any women on this call between the ages of 22 and 65, a very long and slow recovery. This is alarming to me. These are the things that we're trying to deal with at Brave. But I want to make a distinction between the difference between what is bravery and what is confidence, because they are not the two same things. Even though we have measured bravery and we have measured confidence for every person who's done a Brave session with us, we know that there is a distinction between the two, despite the fact that they heavily correlate. So what we know is that bravery, if I feel more brave, I also feel more confident. If I feel less confident, I also feel less brave. So early on, we were starting to be like, ooh, are these levers to help the other one out? And which one is more important? Every day at Brave, we're thinking, why does bravery matter? Today, we're discussing why bravery matters for women, but this is a question we ask every day. And most of the time, the answers are the same. Many of the things that we're going to be saying on this webinar. But sometimes we're like, well, does bravery matter more for confidence or confidence more for bravery? That we don't know yet. We know that the two are correlated heavily. So bravery for us is taking action in the face of fear. We are not speaking about fear too much today. We will on further episodes of this webinar series, but taking action in the face of fear. Fear is actually the essence of bravery. For something to be called a brave act, you have to be afraid of what it is that you're doing. And we make bravery a really big thing in our society. We say firefighters are brave. They are running into burning buildings trying to save people and things and animals. Like, that is hugely brave. But if we only see that that level of bravery is considered bravery at all, and actually that's general bravery, if we're not valuing personal bravery, that is any time I'm outside of my comfort zone, then we're losing a huge opportunity to close this confidence gap, particularly for girls and women. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. Now, scientifically, you can see in the top left corner, and it's light pink here, the definition we used at the beginning of our work was persistence and perseverance despite having fear. Same thing, you're talking about fear is the essence, but you're looking at like really persisting when it's not just something that you're scared of, but their implication is that there are also obstacles. There are sort of multi-layers of fear. For us, we really distill it down to doing stuff when you're afraid, taking action in the face of fear, taking action in fear, which is the basis of a brave mindset, which we are also not talking exclusively about today. But you can think that being brave is when you're moving in your fear. Courage is the same thing as bravery for us. So we use those two words interchangeably. Now, confidence, okay? What is confidence? We describe confidence as the belief in your ability and or your experience. So my belief in my competency, my ability, my skills to apply and possibly lead to success, or possibly my experience. Like I've done this before in the past, because it doesn't all just break down to skills sometimes. So a lot of the times when we're using our work with girls and women, especially definitely for all young people, we say that confidence is the hard stuff that you've been through. The hard stuff that you've been through. If I say to you, what are a couple things that you've been through that have been really hard, and what did you learn, and now what are you capable of doing, of commanding, of dealing with in the future because of that one past moment? There's all of a sudden a level of confidence that maybe didn't exist before. And this is all built on sort of, if you go back to scientifically, it's built on this concept of self-efficacy, that I know I have the skills to apply to this situation. When you're outside of your comfort zone, right? When you're outside of your comfort zone, you may not know that your skills transcend your comfort zone. You may not know they will lead to success or even relevance outside of your comfort zone. And this is where the belief really matters for confidence. And this is where we use bravery and courage just sort of as levers to help each other. Now, we will talk about the chase way later, but in the chase, we talk about something called the crush it loop, which is skill, belief, and action, or competency, confidence, and courage. And a little bit later, I'll talk about how important those things are, particularly confidence when it comes to imposter syndrome. All right, so we know the difference between bravery and confidence, and it's really important because though we know in our data, and though we've seen in the data from somebody else for the self-esteem globally, we know in our data with bravery and confidence that boys and girls both drop, right? Even though girls are lower than boys, and even though we track lower as women than men do across that long and slow recovery, we're all sort of on the same track. Where it's different, where there becomes a huge difference between men and women, it starts at a really young age. And it's when we ask this question, how confident do you feel compared to your peers? Now, any women who are on this call right now, like as soon as you see this word comparison, it's probably triggering a bazillion different things for you. I know it is for me. Like the opportunity to compare myself to somebody else, like it's embedded in me. I take that opportunity every time I can. So when we ask, how confident do you feel compared to your peers? We ask boys, middle school boys, high school boys, 18 to 22-year-old boys, and adult men. This is how many or what percentage of boys to men who say they are less confident than their peers. Only 10%. And it about stays the same throughout their lifetime. So you can imagine, even when they're dropping in their self-esteem, their bravery, and their confidence, their comparison confidence is staying the same. For girls in middle school, it's the same as boys, right? It's at 9%. So only 9% of girls would say they're less confident than their peers. But by the time we get to high school, and we've just updated our numbers here, by the time they get to high school now, 1 out of 5 girls is saying she feels less confident than her peers. And college age kids, or kids between the age of 18 and 22, whether or not they go to college, it's 24%. So now we're talking about 1 out of every 4 girls would say she's less confident than her peers. And our adult average is 21. Now this number has climbed 2 percentage points in recent months. And I can just give you examples of groups that we saw in the last 2 weeks, which is that group in New York City, a corporate group in New York City, 23% of the women in that room would say they were less confident than their peers. And then in a group of women that we worked with in Raleigh, 35% of the women, the adult age women, would say they were less confident in their peers. So why does this matter? Why am I telling you this? Like, you probably are like, yeah, I get it. Or maybe you're as shocked as I was the first time we put this data together and the first time we noticed this. Why does this matter? It matters because if you say you are less confident than your peers, if you say you are less confident than your peers, then your bravery and confidence scores from 2 slides ago plummet. They are so far lower than anybody else who would say they're as or more confident than their peers. And because this is happening for girls in middle school and high school and young women between the ages of 18 and 22, and adult women is the like quickest rapidly rising percentage of women who are saying they're less confident than their peers. This means your bravery and confidence scores are lower. Now I can tell you what it also means. If you do one of our Brave sessions or you work with us with Brave, it also means you get twice as brave during the same time period as anybody else in the room. So that's food for thought. But we are here to talk about why bravery matters for women. Now, when we're talking about what could be happening during this time, with the exception of the statistic of feeling less confident than your peers, boys and girls, same things are happening to their general bravery, general confidence, and general self-esteem, right? But so we're looking at what influences that drop. We know that a shifting change of fears, which we call the fear inflection point, is a big key contributor to fear rising and fear changing. And we think that affects bravery and confidence levels, but there are also a lot of other influences at play. And so when we start to think about why bravery matters for anyone, and then more explicitly why it matters for girls and women especially, if we look at some of these influences that play a key role when we're younger. Now, we're not saying that estrogen and testosterone like have different effects. I'm merely putting these as categories of things that we think are influencers. And I would love for anybody to put in the chat whether they think there are different influencers. And we're speaking here about, society versus biological, nature, nurture, those sorts of things. But for you, just in looking at the slide, do you feel like puberty played a huge role in whether or not your confidence went down or up? Or whether or not, if we say bravery and confidence are correlated, maybe your bravery or your confidence, your willingness to take risks. Perfectionism, like, do you suffer from perfectionism? And did that start when you were early on? How was that bred in you? Do the boys or the brothers you have, like, sort of were told to like be brave and be bold and like be macho? Or do you in fact have that trait? Even if you're a woman now, were you told to be careful, or were you telling your daughters to be careful, or instead were you hearing or telling or receiving any messages of go for it? The stuff in blue is typically what we see books written about our culture and how we're teaching girls to be perfect and boys to be brave. Like, these are some of the influences at play, and I'm open to whether or not you guys have determined there are different influences for you or additional influences for you. This is where we are in our research right now. But nonetheless, these influences, right, are changing fears. These influences, we're looking at this graph of our bravery and confidence and previously from global self-esteem. What kind of effects does this have on us as women? Or is it as people, right? Let's just say that there's a lot of different ways that those influences could affect us. We understand that there's pressure of cell phone usage, there's pressure of society, body image on women that's different than men, maybe not cell phones for all kids right now. We don't even know the ramifications fully of what that's going to mean now. But I can say that we can see some of the effects of these sorts of influences in the way that we are. Right. And I'm interested as I load these up for you to say, maybe in the chat, boom, if you have this thing, or if you experience this thing, or if you suffer from this thing, or if you are this thing, right? This is about being truthful and honest. And I can tell you, this is the part where it can be kind of controversial. Apologizing, right? The effect of some of those influences for me as a woman, and what we've seen from our data and research, is apologizing, that women tend to apologize more, and for just being in, shared space. I can say for myself, I apologize when I open the door for someone else. I don't know why I do that. Is this something that you do? I have to deliberately go into my email and remove all of the times in which I say I'm sorry, or sorry this is late, or apologies for whatever. It's not even, it's just business. Right? It's just business. I'm apologizing. I apologize a lot. Is this an effect from an influence from growing up? That I'm less likely to speak up, right? Some of these effects that I've seen. I'm less likely to speak up, less likely to self-promote. We have so much data out there right now on how women are far more likely to self-promote. We have a whole book by Sheryl Sandberg that started this whole thing off on how we should be leaning in more, how we should be speaking up more, sitting at the table more, taking the mic more, and how other people should be recognizing their biases against women in the room and other marginalized people. And there's a lot of ruminating, right? Like I, particularly as a woman, ruminate. And I hate to put this up here, but these are what we call in our society women things. These are what we say women do, women suffer from, right? And we have a whole self-help genre. We have millions and millions of dollars, maybe even $1 billion industry going after women saying like, here, let's help you deal with your imposter syndrome, with the fact that you're qualified on paper, but you don't feel qualified enough, or you've gotten this opportunity, but you don't feel like you deserve it, or like, yes, you're really good, but look at all these people who have helped you along the way, or I'm not going to apply for a job unless I have 100% of the criteria because I want to make sure that I'm going to do a good job, versus men who will apply if they have 5 or 6 of those criteria. And we talk about imposter syndrome here. And what we think imposter syndrome comes from is like, the whole saying, fake it till you make it. And people say this all the time, fake it till you make it. Do it even if you don't know if you can do it, which I sort of love in theory, right? It's brave, it's going outside your comfort zone. But if you never quite believe that you can apply these skills and that you're deliberately doing this in order to grow, then you're losing. The imposter syndrome becomes that vacancy, that lack of belief you don't have in your skill. It starts to build this like big, huge hole where you never quite believe that you can be doing the thing either that you're doing, that you want to do, that you're going to do, that you have to do, right? And without that belief, there is a massive hole that creates this feeling of being an imposter. Now, what's interesting through the lens of what we do as a company, Bravery, we look at everything through the lens of bravery. So when I look at this list, and this wasn't like gathered because these are all the things that I suffer from, though I do as a woman. And I know women who don't necessarily experience these things acutely. I look at this and I think, wow, this is what we like to tell women that they have a struggle with, is essentially a lack of bravery or an absence of bravery, and sort of by relation, confidence too. Meanwhile, the things that we value in men things, we see as a presence of bravery, emotional control, taking initiative, solving problems, risk taker. I'm interested for the people on this call, particularly if you're women, of which among these things do you have? Do you have the women things and the man things? And I hate that we're calling them these women things and men things. I'm doing this to serve a purpose. Because listen, when we think about it, if we celebrate these things, these men things, we celebrate these things in men, we celebrate these things in leaders, and we have a hard time finding them in women. And if we find them in women, they're not hard to find in women. We, society, are having a hard time finding these in women as valuable character strengths that aren't then turned into she's bossy, she's bitchy, she's too ambitious, and all of these things. So I'm interested in what things do you have? Like I have a lot of these things that are considered men things. I have a lot of the things that are considered women things. And I think one of the biggest compliments we get from our session, though I'm separating these two things right now to make a point, is women who are coming to our sessions are like, I'm so happy that you're not just telling us to be men. And I'm like, yeah, because you know what? We have built all this stuff, some of the stuff that we call ruminating, right? Overthinking. I'm going to think a lot. I'm going to consider so many things. This is actually what makes our pathology, our growing up, these things about us as women, it's so much easier for us to go and get some of these qualities that we assign to men. It's really hard for men to get the things that we've been learning over the course of our lifetime. Now, I don't want to get stuck in this too much outside of the fact that like I get really cynical when I'm being marketed to as someone with imposter syndrome, because I feel like it's been marketed to the women who, to the gal, to the lady who doesn't feel like she's good enough, right? And I am a person who loves self-help. I'm a person who wants to be learning and growing in all those areas. And as a researcher who knows about the data behind a lot of this stuff, I get really mad, and it makes me go backwards, and I want to go backwards to some of these influences, some of these things that really matter as we grow up and we form this this way of being in the world. And of course, these things make me so angry that we are targeting women as these things, and we're celebrating men for these things. Now, we are on this call because we want to know why bravery matters, particularly for women. This is the slow and long recovery that we will experience between the ages of 22 and 65 years old as women. What Brave Enterprises wants to do is start disrupting this, and bravery is our ticket, because a lot of what we don't go for is, or what holds us back. So what we don't go for, maybe that includes like we're not confident enough, or we're not willing to take risks, or we're too risk averse, or anything. And what we're afraid of, these fears that trap us. A lot of this is stuff that we can start training people out of. And we talk about having a brave mindset. We talk about moving in your fear. But at the end of the day, if we can use bravery as a lever for confidence, then that is what we want to do. I, for one, do not want to tell kids, or women especially, graduated from college, you have 40 years of a long and slow recovery, and no day is going to feel like hyper better than the day before. No year is going to feel that different than the year before. You will always be trying to dig yourself out of this hole of bravery and confidence that we have. And what does this do to keep you in the place that you are? What does this do to make it so that you are not going after the things you want, so that fear is in fact compressing you? And that's essentially the crux of it. Why bravery matters for me, and particularly for women, is that we have a need. Women have a need and a hunger for more confidence. And because bravery is an actionable strength, we use it to increase feelings of confidence. Confidence and bravery, in my mind, work hand in hand. If I have the confidence to step out of my comfort zone, then I ultimately get the benefits of all the additional skills and tools I learned by being out of my comfort zone. Finally, it is a lever to increase that confidence, and we use it in so many ways. You can use bravery to help affect the belief you have in your skills, in your ability, and in your experience. As a tip to take away, or as an exercise to take away from here, I'd love for you, of course, to see yourself through this, but that's what this 30 minutes is for. Thinking, okay, what women things do I have? What man things do I have? What woman things that in my life, like I'm one of 4 girls and 2 boys, and my parents were always like, I wouldn't say that in my family, man things, the things I listed as man things were man things. They were like the women things in our family. I think that women have emotional control, the women I know, many women I know. So again, of all those lists of 8 things, maybe the things that we see lack bravery, and the things that are the presence of bravery, however you want to separate them, can you look at yourself through that lens? Sure. But now turn this to the outside and transfer this information and say, if there are 3 to 5 people you find effective in their roles as parents, mother or father, their roles in your company, their roles as colleague, role as friend. Think of, diversify the kinds of people you're considering as being effective in their roles, and then identify what role you think bravery and confidence play in their efficacy, in their ability to be effective among the groups or the people whom they serve. This is a really good, and look at whether they're gendered. Like, is it gendered stuff? Is this woman have these things that show a major presence of bravery? Is this man shows sort of the softer side? Maybe he's effective because he has, he ruminates, he overthinks, he really considers things. So I'm interested in all of your feedback on that too. But look at how, if you look at things the way we look at things, which is through the lens of bravery and confidence, as we've seen that they're correlated, to see the people you value, the people who you think are effective, what they're doing and how that stuff plays a role in their efficacy. Now, we're going to close this bad boy down today, and I so appreciate you guys for being on here. We're going to continue our webinar series on Friday, and we invite you to come to that as well. The big reason we're doing this series is to get our information out there, but also to give everybody an opportunity who's interested in this information, an opportunity to use and learn how to use bravery as a tool to convert fear and to pull on the lever of confidence. A lot of this work is about building a bravery muscle, is about building a brave mindset, and those shifts do not happen overnight. And while information is critical and it's the first step of educating yourself and understanding like what and how I would use this in my life, it takes a long time to build that muscle. So many people we talk to are like, we ask them, what's your biggest fear? Being judged, let's say, and what's one way to be brave in the face of that fear? They'll say, not caring what people think. And we're like, that is a massive mindset shift. And if you have time and interest and you're into this kind of thing, or something about this stuff grips you, then we invite you to join us on our 8-week journey, which is called The Chase. It's 8 weeks of live sessions. There's worksheets, there's journal pages, there's accountability partners, there's like check-ins, all on our online platform that helps you really figure out who are you, not because you don't know who you are, you know who you are, but really looking and identifying and looking at the themes and all the things you've learned in your life to repurpose all the resources that you have of who you are, to figure out quite literally, what do you want? Maybe you're like, I know what I want. Maybe you're like, I don't know what I want. This is to hone in and be really specific on what you want, and then looking back to use who you are to go after what you want and to make a plan. And I can tell you this, by week 4, people are like, I lied to myself. I was lying to myself in week number 1 and week number 2. It takes about till week 4 where you're like, oh my gosh. And that's when the transformation does begin. We had 70 women do our last course, and we're expecting over 100 women to come to this course. It's an amazing community of people who support people. If you happen to be in Raleigh, North Carolina, we do meetups in Raleigh, North Carolina. We do meetups in New York City. If you happen to be in New York City, and if you're in a city where you want to get this going, then let us know. But as a person who's been on this webinar today, you get $100 off if you use the code BRAVERY to register for this course. It opens next week, but you can go and grab your spot with the keyword bravery, which I'll send in an email after this, to morebrave.com. Start chasing. That is the chase. I hope you have enjoyed today's webinar, and I hope you join us again on Friday. We have one on Friday, and then we have another 3 next week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, also at 1 p.m. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your ears. I appreciate your eyes if they were on the screen. And mostly, I appreciate your bravery. Thank you.